Happy people, Tracy Reed here today, coming at you with my second layout using the Cocoa Daisy Little Bee Cottage collection. And today I am inspired by this paper that looks like a bunch of torn pieces of ephemera collage style on this page. So I'm going to be replicating it. First, I am creating this photo mat with this red paper because I think it stands out really well, and I will be adjusting it a little bit here because I think I have a little bit too much red overhang, but I thought it stood out really well from the background paper. And then I'm also going to be taking these paper strips that I have from a previous layout, and I am creating my own little torn pieces that are going to go over the top of the photo to sort of incorporate the background and the foreground together so that it all looks like one big collaged piece, so that it doesn't look like I just put all of my photos and all of my embellishments on top of this beautiful collage in the background, but all looks like almost like I created that background myself. It creates a nice illusion of more work than I actually did. So I'm currently just trying to make sure I don't cover up too much of the photo. I do have this like table in the foreground down here on the bottom of the page or the photo that I do want to cover up. But of course I don't want to encroach upon the subjects of the photo, which are me and my father. Last year in Louisiana, when we surprise visited him almost exactly a year ago for his birthday. Okay, so here's a good start. I'm going to rough up the edges of each of these torn paper strips so that they kind of pop off the page a little bit. And then I'm kind of like, okay, I like this, but it's not quite standing out the way I want it to. I decided there was way too much red here, so I'm pulling a little bit more off, which is always dangerous when it's actually stuck to the page already, but I think I did a pretty good job. And then I decided that I wanted to mat this layout on another color to sort of bring in the edges a little bit and make it look less like it was floating in space. So I'm going to trim down this page. I'm going to cut about a ½ inch off of all the sides, which is going to make it 11 by 11, and it's going to of course be on a 12 by 12 layout, so that gives me about a ½ inch all the way around the edges. It also tightens up the paper strips all the way to the edge of the mat here, which I think helps them look less like they're floating in space, so I thought that that was good. And trim off the branding strip, and then I'm going to start to rough up the edges of this photo or paper mat too, and then when I do, I start ripping it a little bit, and I create some rips around the outside edges, and the back side of this paper is the same red as my photo mat, which is perfection. So I decide to rip up some corners and some of the edges and go ahead and add pops of red around the outside of the page, which I think is just like absolute perfection on this page. It worked out so perfectly and looked really good. Look at how cute that is. Okay, so now we're all roughed up around the edges and ready to go. I'm going to start adding in all of my embellishments. So I'm using just the scrapbook kit plus the paper add-on, the 12 by 12 paper add-on for this page, and I'm not going to be using a few of the bits and pieces that came in the kit, specifically the ephemera pieces, the adhesive ephemera, and then there were some lace and some tags, and I decided to challenge myself instead to use the stuff that I reach for less in my pages, and that is the rub-ons. I do use a lot of rub-ons, but they tend to be my last thing I think about, so I'm trying to think about them first this time. And then also the chipboard, and there are puffy stickers as well. I tend to go for the flatter embellishments, like the ephemera or the die cuts, because I find them easier to like move around, right? They're not adhesive until I peel the backing off, so I just find them easier to work with. So I tend to rely on them heavily. So I'm challenging myself to not use them at all on this page and instead use the things that challenge me a little bit more. You know, I just like to make it a little harder on myself every now and then. So I'm adding these rub-ons over the top of the photos. Again, I'm trying to get that incorporating vibe into this page so that everything looks collaged together and all one big, not layout, one big vibe. I'm going to use the word vibe even though that isn't right. One big piece, art piece, I guess, instead of just putting my photos on top of this beautifully collaged background paper. This rub-on has a frog on it, which is sort of a inside joke in my family. My dad has been through a lot medically. Why couldn't I find that word? A lot medically, and he likens himself to a frog after all of his treatments and stuff. So I had to incorporate that frog on the page because it was just perfect. Plus, I don't know about you, but I guess it's the Disney in me, but I always associate frogs with Tiana and the Princess and the Frog in Louisiana, and we were in Louisiana, so that works real well. Okay, so I'm going to take this big chipboard tag and I'm going to incorporate it underneath this torn paper, just as a little bit different piece. Of course, butterflies. Where there are butterflies offered, I will use butterflies. Then I stuck this one up here with these tags because I just thought it was kind of cool to incorporate something a little different in the collage up there. And again, since that was part of the paper, it made it feel like more part of the layout and rather than just the paper. If I have frogs and butterflies, I might as well have bees. So we stuck some bees in there. And now I'm going to take these scripty stamps and I'm going to stamp right over just wherever I want to. And I think that this really ties everything together perfectly and creates some more like art out to the edges of the pages, because I was still struggling a little bit that everything was a little bit centered and nothing went off the page. So that really helped me to feel a little bit better about the edges of this page. I don't know why. I always just feel like when things are floating and don't feel grounded to me, the page doesn't feel done. There was a second scripty stamp, a little bit smaller, that I'm trying to incorporate as well. Wanted it coming out from underneath that paper strip. Perfect. And one more. And then I also pull out the flower on this page, or the flower stamp for this page, but I can only really incorporate it in one place, even though I try and put it lots of places. It really doesn't work with the composition that I've created here. So you can see I'm just trying to put it anywhere. The only place it's going to work is on the right hand side of this photo. So we're going to go right here and then give up. Lastly, I'm going to add a title. I did add it, I started adding it up here, but I decided that I couldn't read it very well, even though I did like the placement of it with that library card in the back. I couldn't really see it, so I am going to move it down to the right hand side of the photo instead, down here. It says Daddy's Girl, and then since I don't have a secondary alpha in just the scrapbook kit, I decided to just go ahead and write always or forever a. So it says Forever a Daddy's Girl, which I think is kind of works with the scriptiness of the page as well, like all of those stamps. The last thing I'm going to do is I decided that these weren't sticking down well enough and might as well add some extra texture and staple them down, which I think is cool. Double staples always, sometimes X's, sometimes just in a row. But that is it for this page. If you enjoyed it, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. Oh, yep, enamel dots. That's it. If you enjoyed it, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Tracy M. Reed. I'd love to see you over there as well. There's a link in the description box below to Cocoa Daisy if you are interested in starting a subscription, and I will see you next time. Thank you.